My name is Amanda Brown. I'm 32 years old, and right now I should be on my honeymoon. Instead, I'm sitting alone in a quiet apartment surrounded by unopened wedding gifts that will never be ours. The strangest thing about heartbreak is how calm it can feel when it's finally over. There's no screaming, no cinematic storm, just silence. And in that silence, I keep replaying the moment everything shifted from forever to never again. The wedding venue had been perfect. Exposed beams, soft candlelight ivy, trailing up weathered brick. It cost a fortune, and I paid for every cent of it, but that didn't bother me. I wanted Daniel to have the kind of wedding he'd always dreamed of. He used to talk about growing up watching movies where the groom stands beneath a chandelier, promising his bride a new beginning. "That's what I want for us, Amanda," he'd said once. "A fresh start." I thought I was giving him that. Now I realize I was just financing his fantasy. When Daniel proposed a year ago, he did it under a sky full of lanterns, his voice trembling as he said my name. It was the kind of moment that makes strangers applaud. I believed every word, every smile. Maybe I needed to, because I'd spent my whole life fixing things, broken projects at work, broken promises from people I loved, broken confidence I kept patching over. Daniel wasn't the first person who needed saving, but he was the first who made me believe saving him meant saving us. The ceremony itself was flawless. Guests were glowing champagne, glittered in their glasses, and my heart felt light. I remember thinking, this is it, the life I've been building toward. Then came the reception. Daniel's father, Peter, was first to take the microphone. His handshake earlier had been too firm, his smile too wide. He gave the kind of speech people expect at weddings about love, family, the future, until his voice caught when he said, "Our family has been through difficult times." He cleared his throat, forced a laugh, and gestured toward Daniel. "But my son's chosen an incredible woman, the kind who stands beside her man through thick and thin." People clapped. I smiled politely, unsure where it was going. Then Peter said, "Now I'll let Daniel speak for himself." Daniel looked radiant, nervous, but radiant. His eyes found mine across the crowd, and for a fleeting second, I still saw the man I fell in love with, the one who stayed up with me all night helping design our invitations, the one who kissed the ink stains off my fingers. He began softly, "Thank you all for being here. Amanda has made this day everything I dreamed it could be." His voice trembled in that charming way that always disarmed people. "I'm not just grateful for her love, but for her generosity." A ripple of polite laughter. Daniel continued, "Many of you know my family's story, the setbacks, the losses, the unfair turns life has given us." His tone changed, steadier, louder. "But what you don't know is how Amanda stepped in. She didn't just love me, she saved us. She's our miracle." The air thinned. I felt a chill crawl down my back. He turned toward me, smiling like a man about to receive applause. "Today isn't just about our marriage. It's about renewal. Amanda has insisted on helping my parents pay off their debts so they can finally breathe again. It's her wedding gift to us, to our family." Laughter died. For a moment, the only sound was the faint clink of a glass, somewhere in the back. My mother's face froze mid-smile. Kimberly. My wedding planner looked like she might faint. Peter beamed proudly. Daniel's mother, Donna, pressed a hand over her heart. Guests whispered. My ears rang, her wedding gift to us. Those words spun in my skull like an echo in a cavern. I had known his family was struggling. Peter had mentioned once that his business had a little setback. I'd even considered helping privately, maybe a small loan to ease them through. But this public declaration wasn't generosity. It was extortion, dressed as romance. Daniel lifted his glass toward me. To Amanda, he said, voice bright, "The most selfless woman alive." Every pair of eyes turned to me. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then I did what I've always done when cornered. I stood up straight. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. The microphone was only a few steps away. I walked to it. The room held its breath. Daniel's grin faltered, confusion flickering in his eyes. I leaned forward. My voice was quiet, almost tender. "What a burden," I said. A gasp rippled through the hall. I set the microphone down carefully and turned toward Kimberly, who stood near the catering staff, her expression a portrait of panic. "Please send me the final bill for today," I told her evenly. "Pay every worker in full. Add a generous tip. Then cancel everything else, the dinner, the band, all of it." Kimberly blinked. "Amanda, are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "It's over." Behind me, the silence broke into chaos. Daniel's voice rose, desperate, calling my name. Donna's chair scraped loudly against the floor. Peter shouted something about misunderstanding. None of it reached me. I walked past the tables, past the startled guests, out the heavy oak doors, into the late afternoon sun. The light hit me like a cleansing flame, too bright, too real. Somewhere behind me, the applause that was meant for a toast had turned into shouts. I didn't look back. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice, that if you gave enough, people would see your worth. But standing outside that hall, the sound of my heels echoing against the cobblestones, I realized something colder, truer. Some people don't want love, they want rescue. And I was done rescuing anyone but myself. The next 48 hours blurred together like a fever dream, the kind where every time you wake, reality feels worse than before. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from Daniel, from his parents, from mutual friends who didn't know what to say. At one point, I counted 117 missed calls. The first message came an hour after I left the venue. Daniel, how could you do this to me, to my family? You humiliated us in front of everyone. The next, Daniel, you're overreacting, Amanda. It was supposed to be symbolic, a gesture. You made it into something ugly. Then came Donna, sweetheart, please. Daniel's devastated. It was all a misunderstanding. He loves you so much. And finally, Peter. You think you can embarrass me and my son like that. You will answer for this. By midnight, I silenced my phone and dropped it into a drawer. I wasn't ready for the performance they were demanding, the crying, the apologizing, the explaining. I needed quiet. The next morning, I woke to sunlight cutting through the blinds and a single thought: I have to protect myself. So I did what I've always done when life spins out of control. I organized it. I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I named it The Project. It was the same name I'd used years ago for a work crisis I'd fixed single-handedly, a habit of mine turning pain into a checklist. Inside that folder, I started collecting everything: invoices from the wedding receipts, from the florist emails, between me and vendors, every transfer I'd made for deposits or upgrades Daniel wanted. Then, because I couldn't stop myself, I opened my banking app. The numbers stared back like evidence at a crime scene. I scrolled through 18 months of transactions, dinners, where Peter had forgotten his wallet, utility bills Daniel had promised to split, money I'd lent his brother Joshua for rent that was never repaid, even the $2,800 security deposit on our apartment, all from my account. Line by line, I logged everything into a spreadsheet. Column 1, expense. Column 2, amount. Column 3, who benefited. It was mechanical at first. Then it became something else, a quiet rage disguised as efficiency. By the time I finished, the total stared back at me like an accusation. It wasn't just money, it was years of emotional labor disguised as love. That evening, I reopened my phone against my better judgment. Daniel, you can't just vanish like this. You owe me a conversation. Donna, Amanda, darling, this isn't you. We know how generous you are. Don't throw away a lifetime over one bad moment. Peter, we can settle this privately. No need to involve lawyers. I smiled bitterly. Lawyers. The word hadn't even crossed my mind yet. Then came a final text from Daniel that made my stomach twist. Daniel, I'm at the apartment. Joshua's with me. We need to talk. I'm not leaving until you come home. Joshua. The name alone made my pulse quicken. Daniel's younger brother, impulsive, loud, always at our place, drinking my wine and leaving his sneakers everywhere. The kind of man who treated boundaries like jokes. I took a slow breath and typed back, me. The apartment is in my name. I'll be there tomorrow at noon with a friend to collect my belongings. You have 30 days to vacate as per tenant law. Consider this official notice. The reply was instant. Daniel, you can't be serious. After everything we've been through, you're kicking me out. Then seconds later, you're the monster here, Amanda. You left me at the altar, and now you're evicting me. I didn't answer. I just screenshotted the conversation and dragged it into the project folder. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the dining table, surrounded by wedding leftovers, untouched cake, floral centerpieces, the faint scent of roses already turning sour. It's strange how fast something beautiful can decay. I used to think endings were loud, that people screamed, broke things, stormed out. But this was quieter, like paper burning from the inside out. I closed my laptop and whispered to no one. This isn't about love anymore. It's about logistics. The next morning, I called Kimberly, my wedding planner. She answered immediately, her voice tight with guilt. Amanda, I'm so sorry about what happened. Everyone's talking. Kim, I interrupted softly. I don't care what they're saying. I just need the final invoice and the vendor contacts. I'll handle the rest. She hesitated. You sure you want to deal with this so soon? Yes, I said. If I don't start now, I never will. After the call, I walked through the apartment, the one Daniel had called our home. I hadn't noticed before how much of it didn't belong to me. His clutter everywhere, his family photos, his trophies, the half-broken espresso machine he swore he'd fix. It all looked foreign now, like a stranger's life I'd accidentally wandered into. I opened a box labeled Wedding Decor, fragile, and pulled out one of the glass candle holders I'd chosen myself. Inside the box was a folded scrap of paper Daniel's handwriting. Can't wait to start our forever. Love you always. D. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I set the note down gently, like evidence in a case I'd already solved. When people talk about heartbreak, they describe the shattering. But what they never mention is the clarity that follows the brutal, sterile clarity that makes you see every transaction for what it really was. By the time the sun went down, I had a plan. Tomorrow I'd face Daniel, but not as the woman who once loved him, as the woman he'd underestimated. The next day, the city felt unnaturally still. Even the morning air seemed to hold its breath heavy with the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. I drove to the apartment, slowly rehearsing every possible version of the conversation I was about to have with Daniel, but none of them prepared me for what I saw when I opened the door. He was there, of course, but so were his parents. And Joshua. They'd made themselves comfortable like they'd moved in permanently. Donna was perched on my couch with a box of tissues, her eyes already red as if she'd been practicing her tears. Peter stood behind her with his arms crossed, radiating false authority. And Joshua, he was sprawled out on the armchair legs wide, wearing one of my old hoodies, and eating chips like it was a Saturday movie night. Finally, Peter said, voice clipped, "We were starting to think you'd changed your mind." "I didn't," I replied. Daniel stood near the window, looking pale and disheveled. His eyes flicked toward me and then away, like he couldn't decide whether to be angry or ashamed. "You didn't have to bring him," he muttered, glancing at the tall man beside me. "This is Stephen," I said calmly. "He's here as a witness." Stephen nodded politely. He was a friend from work, broad-shouldered, quiet, the kind of presence that didn't need to prove itself. Donna rose quickly, wringing her hands. "Amanda, please. Can't we talk without making it so formal? This is your home. Our home." "No," I said evenly. "It's my home. The lease is in my name. And right now you're all trespassing." Her face crumpled. "Sweetheart, that's not fair. We're just trying to—" Peter cut her off sharply. "Amanda, don't play games. You embarrassed my family in front of 200 people. You think you can just walk away from that?" I met his glare without flinching. "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what I think." Joshua snorted. "Unbelievable." He tossed the chip bag onto the coffee table and leaned back. "You think you can just kick us out? You're cold, lady." I turned to Stephen, my tone calm but loud enough for all of them to hear. "Stephen, would you please call the non-emergency police line? Let them know we need officers to mediate an unlawful occupancy situation." Peter's face darkened. "Now wait, I raised a hand. "No need to shout. I'm done arguing." He froze, and for a brief electric moment, no one moved. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the room. Then in a rush, Donna started crying again, whispering to Daniel, "Do something. Stop her." Daniel looked at me. Really looked for the first time since the wedding. "Amanda, please. Let's talk privately. We can fix this." "There's nothing left to fix," I said. "You lied to me. You trapped me. And you turned our wedding into a transaction." His voice cracked. "I was trying to help my family." "At my expense," I said softly, without even asking. The air between us felt sharp, fragile. He stepped forward, but I took a step back. "This isn't you," he said, shaking his head. "You're not this cold." I almost laughed. "No, Daniel. This is me. The part you never bothered to see, the woman who finally knows when to stop paying for other people's mistakes." Behind me, Stephen's phone buzzed. "Officers are on their way," he said calmly. Peter muttered something under his breath, but he didn't move again. He just stood there, jaw clenched, as if realizing for the first time that intimidation wouldn't work anymore. For the next 2 hours, I moved through the apartment like a ghost, reclaiming her body. I packed my clothes, my laptop, my books, everything that was truly mine. Each drawer I opened revealed another small theft. My jewelry box emptied my blender. Missing the expensive espresso machine I'd bought, gone. I took photos of the damaged scuff marks on the wall, stains on the rug, Joshua's muddy sneakers thrown carelessly into the hallway. Donna trailed behind me, whispering pleas between sobs. "Amanda, you loved him once. Doesn't that mean anything?" I didn't answer. My silence was louder than anything I could have said. When I finished, I placed a printed document on the counter, a formal eviction notice. Daniel looked at it like it might explode. "You're serious," he whispered. "You have 30 days, I said. After that, legal action begins." His mother gasped. "You can't do this to us." I met her eyes. "You already did." As I turned to leave, Joshua muttered something under his breath, a word I won't repeat. Stephen stopped his broad frame, blocking the doorway. "Don't," he said evenly. "Just one word." It was enough. Outside, the afternoon sun hit my face again, the same golden light as that day at the venue. Only now it felt different. Cleaner. I unlocked my car, and as I slid into the driver's seat, my hands finally started to shake. Stephen looked over. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said, though. My voice trembled. I just didn't realize how heavy silence could be. He said nothing, just waited while I took a deep breath and steadied myself. As I drove away, the apartment shrinking in the rearview mirror, I thought about all the times I'd ignored the signs, the offhand comments about money. The way Peter always called me, the lucky one, the guilt trips disguised as gratitude. Love doesn't blind you all at once. It dims you slowly until you can't tell who's holding the light. I wouldn't let that happen again. That night, I added the day's photos and receipts to the project folder. My collection was growing not out of obsession, but survival. Each file was a reminder, facts over feelings. As I closed my laptop, I caught my reflection in the dark screen, tired but resolute. "They thought I'd break," I whispered to the empty room. "But I don't shatter anymore. I document." The story spread faster than I expected. By Monday morning, my name and Daniel's were on everyone's lips, whispered over office coffee machines, dissected in group chats stretched into versions that barely resembled truth. According to some, I'd had a mental breakdown at the altar. Others said I'd snapped under pressure. No one seemed to mention that I was the one who'd been ambushed in front of hundreds of people. I stayed silent. That was my advantage. Let the noise burn itself out. Then, 3 days after the wedding, that wasn't my cousin Hannah sent me a video. "Thought you might want this," her text read. The clip was shaky, recorded from her seat near the middle of the hall. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. I pressed play and watched my own humiliation from the outside. Daniel's smiling face, his voice rising with that righteous energy he always used when he wanted people to think he was noble. "She's paying off my family's entire debt," he declared, "so we can finally have the fresh start we deserve." My voice followed soon after, calm and cutting. What a burden. Then I saw myself walk out. Straight-backed, silent. No drama, just finality. When the video ended, I sat perfectly still. My pulse didn't even quicken. I realized that the worst had already happened, and I'd survived it. That night, I sent this video to 5 people. Not out of spite, but for clarity. Mutual friends, former colleagues, anyone who had been in that hall whispering "Poor Daniel." I didn't add commentary, just the video. By morning, my phone was full of messages that started with, "Oh my God." One friend wrote, "I can't believe he did that to you. I thought he was joking until the end." Another, "You don't owe anyone an explanation. That video says everything." The shift was small at first, but I could feel it, the truth changing hands. Daniel tried calling again that afternoon. I didn't answer, but I read his texts. "Daniel, you made me look like a monster. That video is everywhere. Daniel, you're ruining my life. Daniel, I just wanted to help my family, Amanda. You could have supported me instead of punishing me." Punishing him. The word almost made me laugh. Then came Donna. "Donna, sweetheart, please take the video down. You don't want to destroy everything. We're family." Family. That word again. It had been used like a weapon so many times I'd almost forgotten what it should mean. So I typed back just one sentence, "Me exactly." That was the problem. Hours later, I received another message from Kimberly, my wedding planner. Someone leaked the vendor invoices she wrote. "Daniel's father tried to tell people you didn't pay for the venue. I sent them the receipts with your name on every line." I thanked her quietly. Loyalty, I realized, often reveals itself when the dust settles. That evening, I opened the project again. I'd been updating it, daily receipts, messages, screenshots, even voice memos of the few conversations I'd had with Daniel since that day. The folder had become my silent fortress. Each document, a brick in the wall between me and the chaos outside. Still, as the week passed, I couldn't stop the ache that crept in during the quieter hours, the what-ifs, the soft memories that refused to die. I remembered the first time Daniel met my mother, how he'd brought her tulips because he'd overheard her say they reminded her of her hometown. I remembered the night we stayed up building IKEA furniture until sunrise, laughing until our sides hurt. I remembered the man who once looked at me like I was a miracle. That man didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. It's strange how manipulation works. It doesn't come with alarms or warning signs. It comes dressed as charm, cloaked in gratitude, disguised as love. The next morning, I took a walk through the park near my apartment. For the first time in weeks, the air smelled clean like rain and soil instead of panic. I sat on a bench and opened my phone. Another message blinked on the screen. "Daniel, I heard you filed something. Please, can we meet? I'll make it right." I stared at the words for a long time, then I deleted the message and blocked his number. Back home, I added a new note in the project evidence of continued manipulation attempts, documented and dismissed. Later that night, while organizing paperwork for my lawyer, I noticed something small I'd missed before a payment receipt from my credit card dated 2 weeks before the wedding, $4,800, to a jewelry store I'd never been to. The description said custom cufflinks, P&D. P&D. Peter and Daniel. They'd used my card. For a moment, I just stared at the line item, waiting for the disbelief to fade. It didn't. I printed it out and placed it on top of the growing pile. The total had stopped being about numbers long ago. Now it was about proof of who I'd been and who I refused to be again. By the end of the week, the noise online had quieted. The truth, steady, unglamorous, undeniable, had replaced the rumors. The sympathy that once clung to Daniel's name evaporated. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No messages, no adrenaline, just quiet. When I woke the next morning, the world felt lighter. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and whispered to the sunlight streaming in. "You can lie loud, but truth doesn't whisper forever." I smiled. Then I clicked open the project one last time for the day, saving every document into neat labeled folders. Phase 1 exposure complete. Tomorrow I would start on something new. Not revenge, not closure. Accountability. It's amazing how ordinary the world looks when something monumental ends. Cars still pass, dogs still bark, and the same sunlight falls on everyone, on those rebuilding and on those pretending nothing's broken. By the time the court summons arrived, I'd already stopped shaking whenever I saw Daniel's name. He'd stalled the eviction as long as he could, filing motions claiming emotional distress and temporary hardship. Every delay felt like him grasping at the last threads of control. But the law, slow and merciless, doesn't care about tears or nostalgia. My lawyer handled most of it. Though there were nights I sat awake rereading our case notes, trying to understand how love had turned into a list of exhibits. When I wasn't sorting through paperwork, I found myself back in my childhood town visiting my parents. The house smelled the same coffee wood polish and my mother's lavender hand cream. She didn't ask for details. She just poured tea and said, "When people show you who they are, don't rewrite it into poetry." That sentence anchored me more than anything else. Weeks passed, then months. Daniel's family fought the eviction until the final order came through. When the sheriff's deputies escorted them out, I didn't even go. I sent my property manager, Mrs. Ellis, instead. She was efficient and kind, the kind of woman who could turn devastation into inventory. Her report came 2 days later, clinical, precise, merciless. Walls damaged, furniture missing, kitchen appliances removed, trash excessive. Estimated repair cost $3,985. Attached were photos, holes punched in the drywall, a wine stain across the new rug, my blender gone, the espresso machine gone, the air fryer too. I stared at the report, expecting to feel anger, but all I felt was clarity. I printed everything, added it to the project, and dialed the police station. The officer who took my call sounded surprised when I said I'd like to file a formal theft report. "Against your ex-fiancé?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "and his family." He hesitated. "Ma'am, for household appliances." "I understand," I interrupted. "This isn't about appliances. It's about documentation." He paused again, then sighed. "All right, Ms. Brown, let's file it properly." I left the station with a case number in my hand and an odd weightless calm in my chest. A week later, the letter arrived my small claims court date. The claim wasn't for emotional damage. It was for proof. Proof that truth could be recorded, signed, and sealed. I asked for the cost of repairs, unpaid utilities, and the stolen items. The total, $4,650. The morning of the hearing, I wore a plain navy suit. No makeup, no perfume, just clean lines and calm eyes. Daniel was already there when I walked in, looking thinner, his hair messier, his confidence gone brittle. His parents sat behind him, whispering like nervous spectators. When the judge entered, Daniel tried to smile at me, a desperate flicker of old charm. I didn't return it. His defense was short and predictable. He said I'd left him without warning, that I'd ruined his life, and that the things he took were gifts. He even called them emotional compensation. When he said the words emotional alimony, the judge raised an eyebrow. Then it was my turn. I stood, my voice steady. Your Honor, the lease was in my name. I have the police report filed the day I regained possession of the property. I have receipts for every appliance in question. I handed over the folder, the project. Every page tabbed, dated neat. Daniel tried to interject. She's exaggerating. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Dawson, please let her finish. Thank you, I said. I don't want anything that isn't mine. I just want closure documented in the same language this relationship was built on paperwork. For a heartbeat, silence filled the courtroom. The judge flipped through the evidence, eyes scanning quickly. Ms. Brown, you're asking for $4,650. Yes, Your Honor. He nodded. You'll receive it, minus appliance depreciation. Daniel's mouth fell open. His parents whispered something I couldn't hear. The judge's gavel came down with a dull, final thud. I won. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. It was about something colder, cleaner record response resolution. As we left the courtroom, Daniel called after me. You really had to humiliate me in public, didn't you? I turned, meeting his eyes one last time. No, Daniel, I said softly. You did that yourself. I just filed the paperwork. Outside, the air felt crisp, almost forgiving. The courthouse steps were lined with yellow leaves, and for a moment I let myself just stand there breathing. Later back home, I placed the court documents on top of the final folder. The project was complete, every bill, every photo, every truth cataloged. I opened a bottle of wine, poured one glass, and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant candles. Somewhere out there, Daniel and his family were probably spinning new stories. Maybe in their version, I'd become the villain. Maybe they needed me to be. That was fine. Their fiction no longer required my participation. I took a sip of wine and whispered half to the city, half to myself. It wasn't vengeance. It was accounting. And for the first time in months, I smiled quietly, privately, and with the kind of peace that can't be faked. Months later, it still surprised me how normal peace could feel. Not triumphant or loud, just still. When people think of closure, they imagine fireworks, apologies, a final confrontation where everything clicks. But mine arrived like a quiet knock, the sound of keys turning in a new apartment door. The place was small. One bedroom, cracked tiles in the kitchen windows that looked out over an alley instead of a skyline. But it was mine, every inch of it. I spent the first week rebuilding my life in small rituals, making coffee at sunrise, lining books on the shelf in alphabetical order, folding towels that smelled faintly of detergent and something hopeful. There were no messages, no phone calls, no negotiations. Just silence. I learned to love it. Some nights I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, expecting another wave of texts, the rage, the guilt, the endless justifications. But the screen stayed blank. That emptiness became its own kind of peace. One evening, while unpacking a final box labeled miscellaneous, I found something I hadn't meant to keep. A small silver picture frame wrapped in tissue paper. Inside it, a photo of Daniel and me, taken months before the wedding. We were at the beach, wind in our hair, laughing about nothing. His arm around me, my head tilted back, both of us looking like the world belonged to us. For a long time, I just stared at it. I tried to remember how that version of us had felt. Not the ending, not the chaos, just the beginning. But all I could feel was distance, like looking at a movie I'd once loved but no longer recognized. I slid the photo out of the frame, tore it into 4 even pieces, and dropped them into the trash. No anger, no sadness, just release. Afterward, I sat by the window, wine glass in hand, watching the city hum below. For the first time, I didn't feel small inside it. I felt grounded, unremarkable, and free. Later that night, I opened the project one last time. Every file, every screenshot, every invoice was there neatly labeled, a monument to a lesson learned the hard way. I hovered my mouse over the folder, hesitated for a second, then right-clicked and selected Archive. Not delete, just archive. Because I didn't need to erase what happened. I just needed to put it where it belonged, the past. The next morning, I walked to the cafe across the street. The barista, a young man with a half sleeve of tattoos and tired eyes, smiled and asked, "Name for the order," Amanda, I said. He scribbled it onto the cup. "That's a strong name," he said casually, then went back to steaming milk. I smiled. "It is, isn't it?" As I waited, the smell of coffee filled the air, and for a moment I felt the strange lightness of being unobserved. No more explaining, no more defending, just existing. When I got home, the sunlight poured through the curtains, dust motes drifting lazily in the beam. The sound of the city was distant, muffled, like a world moving on without me, or maybe finally moving with me. I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. Title: New Beginnings. I didn't know what it would be. A journal entry, a story, maybe just a list of things I'd learned. But for the first time in years, the words came easily. 1. Love without accountability isn't love, it's debt. 2. Some families mistake generosity for obligation. Don't let them. 3. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about letting yourself move forward. I paused, staring at the list, then under it, I typed the last one. 4. Peace doesn't make noise. That's how you know it's real. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The faint hum of traffic, the creak of pipes, the rustle of the curtains, it all sounded like life beginning again. I wasn't a savior anymore. I wasn't a rescuer or a provider. I was just Amanda Brown. 32 years old, a little bruised, a lot wiser, and completely free. Outside, a breeze lifted the edges of the curtains, and for a fleeting moment I thought about that day at the wedding. The shock, the silence, the sound of my own voice saying, "What a burden." It didn't sting anymore. In a strange way, I was grateful for it. Because that sentence, quiet, final, unshakable, had been the first honest thing I'd said in years. I turned off my laptop, set my cup down, and whispered to the empty room, "The project is complete."